Hello, welcome to the ninth episode of the XDA Android podcast. Our goal is to discuss the latest in Android tech news from an enthusiast perspective. I'm joined here today by people from Reddit, just Reddit.
Hi, I'm Anthony Artizone. I am an AMA coordinator on the Android subreddit.
And Daniel Morchena here.
All right, so it's been a slow news week, and we just published the podcast recently, but there's still some things that we'd like to discuss in this week's podcast. One of them is the fact that cheap phones are getting better. We all know that. But it's only when you actually hold one and when you experience it firsthand that you can really tell how far we've come in the low-end space. Particularly, I remember when I first held the Moto G. I purchased 2013 Moto G, and I was simply appalled by its speed. It was running Jelly Bean back then, not quite the optimizations of KitKat, but we know that Daniel here just recently got a new Moto E. He mentioned that in the last podcast. He got it for Black Friday, really cheap. He's going to tell us all about his experience, and then we can discuss about the low-end range and how it's changed over the years.
Yeah, so this morning or this afternoon when I got home from work, my first Moto E, I ordered three of them, like I mentioned last week on the podcast. And the first one came in today, and I opened it up, and I was honestly pleasantly surprised. Now, to of course get out of the way, the first thing, I don't care about updates on this device. It does suck what Motorola did with killing, the prospect of future updates for the phone. I still think that's messed up because it is the 2015 model. But I'm really impressed with not only the build quality of it, but also the quality of the components. It booted up. It's running Lollipop 5.1.1, and I honestly didn't know I was using, an $80 device when I first opened it. Now I think the Moto E retails, I think it's around $150, I think, for the second gen. Verizon's model is a little bit cheaper since it's locked to the carrier. But I only got it for $10. But even at the $150 range, I mean, I haven't had a whole lot of time to play with it, but I've been really impressed with the quality of the screen. Most impressively, there's no black light bleed on like the Moto Active display thing that they have that came on the device. It's vibrant, it's punchy, the viewing angles are really nice. It's no flagship device, but even for $150, it is actually a really, really nice little phone. It only comes with 8 gigs of internal storage, so you do have, the expandable storage options as far as an SD card that are available for it. It can't make use of the benefits that Marshmallow will bring with the inclusion of that into internal storage. But I'm really impressed with it. I also played with a Kindle Fire. Today as well. I was going ahead and putting a Google Play Store on it for a workmate. And that's kind of the opposite side of the spectrum. That's a $50 device that was on sale for $35. And, I think a lot of people who are coming from iPads or flagship devices are going to be really disappointed in that device. Not necessarily its performance, but its screen. Its screen is borderline disgusting, in my opinion. I'm sorry?
For a tablet, too. I mean,
yeah.
A tablet has to have a good screen.
Exactly.
Otherwise,
It's really washed out. It's got backlight bleed. Not terrible, but a little bit of backlight bleed on the corners. And it has the worst viewing angles I've ever seen. I mean, worse than some of the first-gen AMOLED displays that used to turn like bright blue or bright green, depending on the way you look at them. It is really bad. It's a really nice-feeling tablet. I mean, it feels cheap, but it feels sturdy. It doesn't feel like it's going to break apart in your hand like some other $35 tablets or $50 tablets. But the screen is just, to me, that's a deal breaker. The screen has to be somewhat respectable. The Moto E nails that, in my opinion. But the Kindle Fire, I think a lot of people will be disappointed when they try to watch movies on it, and it just doesn't, it's not appealing.
Yeah. I remember when I got that Moto G, I was also very, very impressed by its screen. It was, I bought it in Argentina, and back then phones were ultra expensive. It's when the dollar to peso ratio was starting to shoot up, and getting your hands on a good phone for that cheap was very hard. Since then, the Moto G has grown so much in my country because people recognize it is a quality device. However, the corrupt companies and the greedy people, mostly the greedy carriers, they overcharged dramatically for the Moto G. I remember this one time. Best Buy had a promotion where you could get a Moto G for Verizon for $20, and that meant I made a post about that on social media with all my Argentinian friends. That meant that with those 20, that means that you could get 20 phones at Best Buy for the price of one Moto G in Argentina. That's how
Wow.
crazy. That's how crazy it's been overpriced. And yes, you get that right. It's been that overpriced. But it also speaks to the fact that even though it's not quite as expensive as flagship in Argentina, it's still much more expensive than other mid-range devices, and it's got a better brand name, but too, it's got advertisements everywhere. But it also speaks to the fact that people are content with that Moto G. And in Argentina, I recommended that phone so much because it was affordable and it was good, and the screen was good, performance was good. How's performance on the Moto E? Because that's one of the things that Google works so hard to optimize for low-end devices.
I'll give it some serious credit. It was really snappy. Like I said, I haven't had a whole lot of time. I am going to actually just try to throw everything I can at it and see how it performs. But in things, just normal app switching, opening the camera, taking a picture, it updated everything from the Google Play Store. It got the brand new Google Play, the Google Play Store design. And, I mean, it was really snappy. There was nothing when I was using the phone that told me this phone costs less than $250.
Right.
I was going to say the real test would be to throw Snapchat on it and try to use Snapchat with it. If it works, if Snapchat works well on it, then you know it's a good device. Because even on my Nexus 6P, Snapchat can lag.
Yeah, Snapchat's just a poorly coded device on most devices.
I always try to explain that to my girlfriend. She always, she uses Snapchat a lot with her friends in Sioux Falls, her sisters. And she was like, "How can I get a better ROM for Snapchat?" I was like, "You can't." But then again, some people complain about Hangouts. I have no issues with Hangouts as fast as performance goes. There was a time where Hangouts would refuse to send a message until I restarted the application.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most annoying period. I think that was slightly before that big update, or
the 4.0, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think. Oh, I mean, a lot of the problem with Snapchat. Obviously, you saw the 6.1. I think it is update for iOS, which has quick reply and stuff like that. I don't think people realize that
Hangouts or Snapchat?
For Hangouts. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't think people realize that Hangouts is different for iOS and is for Android. On Android, it's meant to be kind of like an alternate texting application, as well as like a traditional thing like WhatsApp or Telegram or things like that. And the reason why it doesn't have all these cool features that it might have iOS is because the carriers have been purposely trying to stop that. We saw that when Google released Lollipop and they had to create their Messenger app as the default SMS because carriers complained. So I don't think people actually realize that. But I'll echo that with the exception of maybe quick reply. I don't really have any issues with Hangouts. So
yeah. Even with that said, though, I mean the application for Android is just inferior to iOS. When speaking about Hangouts, I use them both extensively on an iPhone 6s and a Nexus 6, as well as an iPad and a Nexus 7, and in almost every single way, the iOS app is superior in its layout and its fluidity.
Absolutely.
And they do a lot of things that is really cool on iOS where it kind of breaks the standard design for iOS, so it kind of brings some Android design into iOS, and they do it really well.
But to be fair, Google does it with all their apps. To be fair,
that's true. Yeah, I really wish though that they would spend a little bit more time on the Google or the Android version of Hangouts. But one thing we have to remember though is they have to build that application to run somewhat smoothly on a myriad of devices, as opposed to iOS. Absolutely. You're fine tuning this for really one platform. Maybe 15 devices.
That's true.
So that's a big difference.
But I can see the complaint because, for example, I could go grab my iPad right now and join this call through Hangouts on my iPad. I can't do that with my phone. There's no video. I can see where people, especially hardcore Android users who actually like using Hangouts, particularly for SMS, I can see why they're upset. But I use Messenger, so for me, Hangouts is kind of just there. I use it every now and then, but for the most part, it's kind of just there.
Yeah. So, swinging back to the topic of low-end devices, it's kind of funny that we're using popular applications and Google applications as a benchmark for performance of low-end devices. That kind of speaks volumes about the optimization behind our favorite services. But you mentioned that Hangouts has to be optimized for all these devices, and it's true. And the fact that the most remarkable part about low-end devices is that Google has been finely tuning the operating system itself to accommodate for these devices that don't have the hardware resources to run Android like it wants. I mean, it's very easy to forget just how bad Android was in terms of performance. I sometimes look back upon videos on YouTube, and I find videos where reviewers claim that the phone is buttery smooth, and you see the device visually lag, in their operation when they're showing how smooth it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's been one of the biggest purposes of KitKat when KitKat came out. And the big thing was, okay, let's make this thing work on half a gig of RAM, and let's push the development market, and that they did. Google also pushed it with Android One, and different OEMs and the world market have pushed for these emerging markets all around the world. Now we see India and countries like Brazil and a lot of other places being targeted by OEMs specifically, going out of the way to produce cost-effective devices, or even devices that perhaps are not the most cost-effective, but they have perks that are specific to that region. For example, Samsung has phones in India that the selling point is the fact that they come with data-saving options, kind of like what Opera Max has on the browser version. Um, the data saving options of Opera browser, and that alone is a saving point because people on India, they're on limited data plans, and they need to buy a phone that is the most efficient phone for what they do, but what they do consumes data, and there's only so much data that they can use.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you, and I think we're seeing Google and Android, and this is probably something that's been happening for a while, and this is honestly my first time I've ever used a device, a sub flagship device for any period of time outside of like playing with it in a store.
Aren't you spoiled?
And I mean, it's impressive to see just how well that it runs on this device. And like you said, I've never been able to experience what people are going through in India with data, and then with the cost of devices, like you said, back where you're from. And I think that it's a testament to what Google and Android are doing to make sure that like everybody calls it, what is the next billion, are able to connect and are able to have a somewhat decent experience, as opposed to, I mean, we think 3 years back, before Motorola put the Moto G and the Moto E on the market, the only mid-range or low-range devices that you had were just utter dumpster fires. They had horrible screens. They were still resistive touchscreens. IPS was non-existent. I mean, that Moto E has an IPS display. It's not even, a cheap TFT display.
Right.
So it's impressive to see how much they're packing into, these low to mid-range devices.
Yeah, and what's also very interesting is that in the high-end space, there's been changes as well. OnePlus is largely accredited for the affordable flagship phenomenon, and it's gotten to a point where we actually see publications saying that flagships are dying, or that flagships are dead. I think that's more
That's
buzzword
hyperbole.
more than anything. Right.
Yeah.
It's just a way to grab clicks from people. They're not going away. They might not. They are seeing that their bang per buck ratio, the differential is becoming lower and lower. But that's to be expected because the low-end phones are becoming really good, and there's some plateaus that flagships are hitting. As far as performance, I think that in terms of practical performance, there is a plateau, and that's why the Moto E is able to run so well. I mean, you guys remember when that one video was trending of the Moto E outspeeding the Galaxy, the Galaxy S5? That was crazy.
Yeah.
But even then, I think that was a little skewed because when you look back at the Galaxy Note 3 and the Galaxy S5, there were some serious issues with the stock ROMs where there would be a delay when clicking an application, and especially when pressing the home button. It was only custom ROMs and then Lollipop that fixed those issues, especially on the Note 3. There was a huge delay when pressing the home button if you leave the application open for more than a single second. But other than that, we actually seen performance increase to flagship levels. A Moto E now is better than a Nexus 4 was back in its day. Not the Nexus 5. The Nexus 5 was it was the the jewel in the crown of Android performance, and in many ways, it still is amazingly good. To be honest, I think that the Nexus 5 runs better than the 5X. And you can attribute that to the forced encryption on the 5X. You can attribute that to a number of factors. But overall, I was very disappointed with 5X performance, which also goes to show you that flagships can also have bad performance, and even Google flagship. We've seen this with Samsung. Now we see it with Google. Sometimes not everything is fine-tuned, and the attention to detail and the attention to quality that Motorola is putting on these devices and these lineups is just outstanding, because the user experience does not suffer a bit from the fact that it has a 4-core processor.
Yeah, exactly.
No, a low-end processor.
Yeah,
I mean, go
ahead.
That would be exaggerating. It's like
I wanted to shift gears a little bit, so you can go ahead.
Oh yeah, when I think about it, I relate it to sports cars. You have the Porsche or something like that, and then you have a Mustang with a ton of horsepower. And yeah, in the straight line acceleration, the Mustang may be able to keep up with the Porsche, but when you start going through the breadth of an autocross course or a full course when it comes to corners and top speed and acceleration and handling, and you combine all of those factors, that's where the Porsche may pull ahead than the Mustang. And then I relate that to the same thing with devices. You have the Moto E, and comparing it to a Galaxy S5 or Galaxy S6, and that thing's running neck and neck with it. But it's the fine-tuning, the polish, the long time running that you're seeing with the flagship devices, in my opinion, that really set them apart. You look at the Galaxy S6, or you look at the iPhone 6S Plus, or 6 Plus S, or I can't remember the order.
6S Plus.
But it's the little things that count. It's the better microphones. It's the highly tuned microphones. It's the finely tuned cameras. It's the NAND storage. It's so stupid to talk about NAND storage because nobody puts that on a spec sheet. But if you use a Galaxy S6 and a Nexus 6 or a Nexus 5, and you use an iPhone 6S and an iPhone 6, you will absolutely see the difference in NAND. And it's
absolutely.
Yeah, it's almost jaw-dropping.
I was going to say, I remember when Google did that AMA on Reddit, and they basically were like, they said they used something. I don't know the specifics
software,
of what they're called. But like the storage, and people were like, oh, that's what they're using? They're not using, whatever the iPhone uses? Like, that's what they're...
Even without the hardware encryption and still sticking with software, the type of internal storage that Android is sitting on right now is not even close to.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like people were hoping
that
they would have switched gears and used what iOS uses. But
to be honest, though, when it comes to internal storage, I don't think anybody is on the same plane as iOS right now. There were more
than one person actually upset in the AMA about that, or even outside the AMA who were like, "Oh yeah, did you see the AMA? They said that they were using this kind of internal storage."
Yeah. So obligatory car analogies aside, it's very true that there is this phenomenon where so many specs get forgotten. I think that the user experience is a holistic thing, and I came to realize that a lot of people have what I call hardware dyslexia, where they see a number of cores and a frequency, and they assume that processor is going to be the bomb. And it's no secret that many manufacturers actually tune for that to get that spec sheet a little bump and make the phone more appealing in theory, but not in practice. Because in practice, a phone is a holistic thing. It depends on everything, and like you said, NAND storage speeds are very, very important in phones. And switching back to Note 3 after being so used to the Note 5 and trying to flash ROMs and make backups on the Note 3 is a nightmare. It really is. And the phone even heats up way more than it should, The Note 5 is just a silent, cool, and fast beast when it comes to anything a power user wants to do.
Yeah.
Except, of course, removable storage.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like that's why nowadays internal storage actually is something to pay attention to, because it's all you've got. You can't just throw a SanDisk in there and pretend like, oh, I don't even have to use the internal storage if I want to. I can use my 64 gigabyte SD card. It's not an option for most people. I think what phones still have it? The newest Moto X still have it. LG G4 and the V10 have it.
Sony has it too.
Sony has it. Does HTC still have it? I believe so, right?
I think so. Yeah, I think the A9 brought it back. Yeah,
okay.
I'm pretty sure that has it.
So like you're thinking, oh, that's a lot of Android manufacturers that have it. But you look at what the Android market is. It's mostly Samsung who took it out.
But, But speaking of Sony and updates, some news came out today that Sony is pushing for a reboot option to be baked into AOSP, and
Yeah.
it's
and that's just like people on comments were like, why is Sony doing this? I could just put it in their own ROM. And someone made the point that I was gonna make. They said, they were like, well, if it's an AOSP, it's less they have to update in their own ROM, so they can push updates faster. It just makes updates that much quicker if they do it.
Exactly, and not a lot of people know this, but Sony has been working very closely with AOSP, I'll probably say for the last 2 or 3 years now. And most of their Xperia Z devices are able to run AOSP pretty much normal builds. They don't have a lot of their camera features and specifics out of the box, but they do run AOSP very well because Sony is working so closely with the project to maintain it and keep their devices as close to spec as possible.
And of course, everyone knows about that initiative they had in Sweden earlier this summer, where if you looked at what their plan for, I think it was 5.1.1 Lollipop into Marshmallow, it's basically stock Android. The icons looked a little different, but it was basically stock Android.
Yeah, I believe that's what's shipping on the devices now too, is that very vanilla experience.
Yeah. So Sony's open device program is definitely amazing. At the Big Android Barbecue, I had a chance to talk to some people about that, and I actually sat through a presentation. The things that they're doing for developers is really amazing, even beyond the consumer, even enthusiast-friendly stuff. They're pushing for one kernel, unified kernel for Xperia devices. They are providing all these AOSP resources. They are working on the open sourcing this camera framework, this hardware abstraction layer, so that people can make the best out of the Xperia device's camera. They're actually opening up the hardware, not just the software. The development efforts that Sony is coming through lately are amazing. Nothing short of amazing.
It's a real
stuff that they're doing with Marshmallow is also great.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a real shame that they don't market very well in the U.S. for their phones. Like if you live in the U.S. and you think of Sony, you think of PlayStation or speakers, or you don't think of phones, which is a shame because they make nice hardware, at least from what I've seen in stores. I've never owned a Sony device myself, but what's going to happen to them in the future? Like the whole rumors about their smartphone division's going to go belly up. Hopefully it doesn't happen.
Yeah. One thing to keep in mind though is Sony. They have a lot of money behind them, and and it's sad. It's not just the U.S. market. I think it's globally. Sony is not marketing themselves properly. Their mid-range devices are overpriced. Their low-range devices are overpriced, and their flagships are overpriced. Not to mention the fact that they're not advertising anything. So it's sad to see them pushing so much effort towards AOSP and not really benefiting from it, but ultimately I think they will make a comeback, and we're going to start seeing a lot more Sony devices. But it's good to see Sony working with AOSP and trying to push something forward. And as a lot of us, we modify our phones and root them and stuff. The reboot option is something that most of us take for granted.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's just something that's always there because every ROM puts it, Gravity Box puts it on. So it's kind of sad that most people don't get that, but it's good to see Sony pushing that forward.
Yeah, but I think the more important thing was Google's response, which was basically they merged it with a thread that was removed back in February for saying no, we're not going to do this. So Google's basically and Sony's proposal is just put it in the developer options. So by default it's hidden, but if you want to, you can enable it and then you have it. But Google's doesn't even want to go that far. They're just like, we don't want to do it. So it's a shame that Google's kind of just doesn't want more customization. Marshmallow brought more customization. And
well, then merging it with that existing issue, that other tracker that was open in the bug tracker, that was something different, and that was wanting to put it in the base OS. So they really haven't responded to this one of putting in a developer options, and I completely expect to see a reboot option come in the developer settings shortly. I mean, it's a logical for it because I understand why Google doesn't want to put it in the standard OS because it's just confusing, and to be honest, reboot has a bad connotation when we think of Windows. You have to reboot your Windows computer in order for it to run properly.
Right. So you turn it off and on again. Yeah.
Exactly. It has a horrible connotation, so I understand why they'd want to steer away from it.
Yeah.
But putting in the developer options, it makes sense, and I totally expect to see that shortly, especially with the System UI tuner. making it into
that's a
base
blessing.
Marshmallow. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
clean screenshots nowadays.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, so I do understand that. I still think it's not the best option to just remove it. Even tuck it away, that's a little better. But, I did miss a reboot option when I got a Lollipop on my Nexus 5. I'm sure you know why.
Huh?
Get it?
Oh, memory leaks.
Yep. Yeah, he had a memory leak right there.
Mm.
You had a memory leak right there, friend.
There is a total memory blackout of the beginning of Lollipop. I'm just gonna say that. There's a total memory blackout of Lollipop.
You know what it was?
That was my
though?
favorite OS.
No, you know what it was though?
Experience.
We all read Mario's article. Marshmallow is what Lollipop should have been, and we kind of just pretended that Lollipop didn't exist.
Yeah.
We're like, we jumped straight from K to M. L doesn't exist.
I'll be honest. Anything pre 5.1.1 to me
Garbage.
is dead. Yeah,
Garbage,
it's dead
yeah.
to me. I ignore it. It's
Absolutely
just
garbage.
it was horrible. I mean, it was good for the movement that it did, but it was horribly implemented, and I'm glad Google fixed it before they moved on to 6.0 with 5, because 5.1.1 is a very stable OS.
Yeah,
But,
5.1 was fine on my Nexus 6.
But speaking of updates, we just as we were about to start the podcast, we actually saw a tweet regarding some new emoji that are going to be coming out from Hiroshi Wakame, I believe is how you pronounce his name. And his tweet was kind of cryptic. If we kind of look into it a little bit, he says, look, new emoji are coming to Nexus devices next week. Font and text details shared with OEMs to include in their updates too. But if you scroll down through his replies, we see him say, a new keyboard, new font, new code, so new system image. Nexus will be updated next week. OEMs decide when to with their own update schedules. And then somebody else replied, probably some bug fixing. He says, I can't spoil all the surprises. So just from me, from the outside of seeing this, it almost looks like we're looking at the beginning of Android 6.0.1. And kind of combine that with the fact that we know from the tweet, I think he tweeted back at MKBHD regarding the Pixel C that he had it with him. Something tells me that next week we're going to be looking at an announcement of Android 6.0.1 as well as the Pixel C announcement. What changes that might bring, hopefully we'll see a return of multi-window, because that would be really nice on that perfectly symmetrical screen that's on the Pixel C. But what do you think about this, Mario? Do you think that it's something big that's coming next week, or do you think that we're kind of looking at something?
I can guarantee that we'll see emoji. That's as far as I can say. But
playing silent on that one.
To so many people, that's huge to many people, especially, I don't know, the Twitter crowd that thinks that tweeting the same emoji 3 times somehow makes it louder.
Yeah.
But, I personally don't mind. I'm fine with the emoji that I have, and, I don't really use emoji or stickers. I would like to see... multi-window. Why not? You guys already know where I stand on multi-window, and it's like I have a stronger stance on multi-window than I do in many political issues. So,
I think the emoji issue. Just going back to really quick. I mean, for me personally, it's not getting more emoji. It's just being able to see, like, for example, like if someone with an iPhone sends me some emoji, sometimes I get like that rectangle with the X. And it's just annoying. So not being able to see that would be a plus. Even if we don't actually get any new emoji, just updating the Unicode so those disappear.
That will bring the new emoji. In order for it to be handled, it needs to be available on the device as well, which is why you're getting those rectangles with the X's. So
exactly.
I fully see them upgrading to the new, what is it, UCC standard? I can't remember what the term is.
I think it's 8.0, because Android is on 6.0 right now, I think.
Yeah, and I see them talking about 8.0.
Or they're on 7. It's on 9. They're two numbers behind where Apple is, basically.
Yeah.
So.
But I think that it should be good, and I'm hoping. I know, Mario, you're kind of playing it cool, but I'm actually really hoping that we are seeing another big Android update come out next week. We are expecting at least there will be the new system images, because we're going to be having the new security update as well.
For December.
That is due next week for December as well. So hopefully it might come with a few extra little tricks, and hopefully you can finally get your Pixel C information, Mario.
Dark theme. Theme.
Maybe.
No. Dark theme's not going to happen, I can guarantee.
Yeah.
I never underestimate updates. But...
I know. Actually,
no, true.
I guess switching gears, since you mentioned Pixel C, there was some news that came out about a potentially new Nexus 7 next year to be manufactured by Huawei. So obviously the Nexus 7 2012 and 2013, two great tablets, both manufactured by ASUS. But it looks like Google's letting Huawei take the leap of the take a crack at it since they just released the new Nexus 6P. So interesting. I guess my personal opinion was 7-inch tablet seems kind of small with how big phones are getting, but I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think, will it bend?
I was going to say the same thing. I can't wait to see this thing crack in half like a cracker, man.
No, but honestly, no. I think that would be great. I think that Huawei is really proving itself in terms of the user experience that they're providing in their packages. Not just the Nexus 6P, but also their other phones, and I like how they're bringing more features into Android. A lot of people hate Force Touch. I think that Force Touch has a lot of potential when it is properly implemented into a user interface. Even as just a cosmetic thing, I think Force Touch would synergize greatly with material design, especially since it's all about depth and you're all about pushing objects.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because
it's great.
I was gonna say the only person I know that has Force Touch on their phone, she thinks it's pointless. So I mean, I don't really have much. I don't have really much experience with Force Touch.
I'm on the opposite side of the spectrum there. On Force Touch on my 6S, I think it's a game changer for interface design. Now, iOS I don't think lends itself very well to it, but like Mario said, I think material design lends itself to Force Touch very, very well. Yeah. It's a lot of the little things that you can do, the sub-menus you can hide behind it, the extra little features that, it doesn't change the way that you interact with the device dramatically, but it changes it just enough to make it a little bit more special.
Yeah, and obviously
you can jump to things quickly, and I really like being able to view links and things without having to open a link. You just press hard on it, and especially when surfing Reddit, it's amazing because it just.
I was going to jump on. Yeah, I was going to jump on that. Like for example, like if you're going, I mean, at least like 95% of the time I open Instagram, for example, is to post a picture. I don't spend all day scrolling through my Instagram feed, but I'll open it often to post a picture. Being able to just do that right from the home screen, it would just save those few seconds. Could be very useful. Yeah. So
but that being said, in my opinion, I think if Huawei is working on a Nexus 7, and if Google's looking at bringing back the Nexus 7, I think we're going to see a heavy media entertainment-centric device. We've got the Pixel C is coming out, and that is clearly geared towards the getter-dones. This is going to be a more productivity device. You're going to see Google Drive pushed on it, Google Docs pushed on it, the keyboard attachment. I think if Google comes out with another 7-inch device, you're going to see Chromecasts being pushed with it hard. Because the Nexus 7, I mean, I still have both my Nexus 7s. The 2013 my son uses every single day, and it is a really good device.
I was actually going to ask, the original Google TV or Android TV, whatever the original their first foray into TV wasn't the Nexus 7 the remote for that? That's what I heard at some point. Like you got a Nexus 7.
The Nexus 7 launched with the Nexus Q, right, Mario? And wasn't it supposed to be the remote for that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. But one thing, I mean, because I remember the Nexus 10 had an HDMI port in it. Obviously, the new Nexus 7 wouldn't have it because you don't need it. But I think it's gonna be something like that where it's just like you can use it as like a Chromecast remote. Or like
That's what I expect to see. I expect to see front-facing speakers, in my opinion, and kind of following that design language that Google's pushing forward. I don't think it's going to be anywhere close to the Pixel C. I think it's going to follow along with the the 6P and the 5X. And
I'd be surprised if it was north $300.
Yeah, if it's priced right and if it has the right features, I think we're going to see a killer device on our hands. Just because $200 tablets from Android suck unless you're going to get a NVIDIA. And NVIDIA Shield's it's a great tablet, but outside of that, you've got a lot of really crappy tablets.
Niche. And
if
you're not going to be doing a lot of gaming, then it's
and Samsung doesn't know what they're doing with tablets right now. So.
No, the Galaxy View.
So they're just trying to follow.
Awful. It's so awful. I was using the Galaxy View with Corey when we went to the Mall of America a couple of weeks ago. It's awful. Like it's so slow. The resolution is not good. The screen is just not good. It doesn't feel right. No wonder they're dropping the price already. It's a piece of crap.
Yeah, for what you're getting for that price, it's amazing that they even passed the demo model. But I mean, we have seen a lot of crazy devices from Samsung before. Remember, we had the Galaxy Round.
Oh yeah.
What was
Oh
the other
yeah.
one they had?
Uh,
The
So
Galaxy Round. Oh my God.
yeah, so we have had our fair share of devices from Samsung that have been out of left field. They fail, but
mhm.
I honestly think though that Samsung learns from these and they implement
They
features
do.
into their other feature
Yeah.
devices better, because out of the Galaxy Round came the Galaxy Note Edge, and out of the Galaxy Note Edge comes the S6 Edge Plus and S6
Yeah.
Edge. So
Definitely.
they are learning from their mistakes. So I definitely give them credit for that. I don't know. I mean, maybe they'll have the Note 6 will come with a built-in handle so you can hold it.
I mean, well, actually, one thing I want to touch on for the next 7 though is, I mean, because I brought this up, is I would never buy one because I have a Nexus 6 and a Nexus 6B, both huge phones. I have no use for a tablet. I mean, I have an iPad too, but even if I didn't have an iPad, I'd be more interested in maybe like a 9 or a 10-inch tablet. I don't want something so close to my phone. So is 7 inches too small for a tablet nowadays?
Yeah, go on, Mario. What do you think?
Oh, nothing. I was gonna say, please, let's just get those thoughts out. I was just gonna say, regardless if it's too big or too small, I don't think the size matters. I'm just saying. No, but I'm really what I really mean is that the price is gonna be killer. The price is going to be the most important thing of this tablet, and I've been around a few years not to expect Google to listen to everyone's desires for low price devices and go on with it and provide the best value. Again, because they did provide the best value with the Nexus 5. Like I said, a lot of people credit the the affordable flagship title to the OnePlus One. I credit it to the Nexus 5. That was the first flagship where I felt, wow, this is a game changer. The Nexus 4 was a good deal too, but the Nexus 5, I felt that it was a deal
Yeah,
breaker.
and I mean, important to realize Google started the 7-inch tablet revolution with the Nexus 7 back in 2012. Like before that, basically just had an iPad and that was it. Like all the tablets were big tablets. 7-inch tablets were unheard of before Google brought it out with Asus. So.
That's
Exactly.
right.
Well, I mean, there were a number of 7-inch tablets before that, but you're right. The price was right. Samsung, I remember, they had that one back in gingerbread, I think. And I think that's kind of the story of what I hope Google does with the Nexus 7. I hope they learn from the mistakes with the Nexus 9. Just give us a good, solid, but very affordable device, because the Nexus 7 in 2012, when that thing first came out, like you said, it was a game changer. There was nothing in its price range that could compete with that device. So if Google does that again, because the 7-inch market has decreased, we could start seeing, like we talked about in the beginning of the podcast, affordable devices that are really, really good, that you actually want to use, and not these, pieces of garbage. A friend asks me, well, what tablet should I buy? And you really can't recommend anything other than an iPad Mini 2, because at $200, $250, there's nothing that can compete with it.
Unless they game a lot, then you could maybe recommend the NVIDIA Shield.
Yeah, for somebody who wants to tinker or something, but the generic person, the best device is still the iPad Mini 2. So seeing Google focus on the lower end market, I really hope they do that. If this Nexus 7 is, more than just vaporware, because I don't believe it's been confirmed from multiple sources yet. It was really just one site that's saying that Huawei is being pegged for it. I think it's due time for a Nexus 7 for sure.
Then again, that's how the
Nexus 8.
Yeah. That's how the Nexus 6B started. The rumor for the Nexus 6B started with one site, one alleged claim, and it grew bigger and bigger. So that's the thing with rumors and leaks. You never know. Sometimes just someone makes them up. Sometimes people wake up one morning and say the Note 6 is gonna have a 16-core processor, 8 gigs of RAM, 4,200. Yeah, you get the reference.
Where did you get those perfect specs from, Mario? It's almost like you read them.
Sounds like a dream. It sounds like a computer, like a desktop gaming computer.
Right. You know what? They're actually the minimum requirements for gaming laptops, according to my sources.
The 8 gig RAM.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, hey, that's actually, what the Snapdragon 830 is rumored to have.
Yeah. Actually, I just wanted before we move on, I just wanted to point out the newest iPad Mini is the 4.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you said iPad Mini 2, and I was like,
No, I was saying for that price range, you can get the iPad Mini 2 for $220, I think, for the 16 gig model, and
okay.
you can't
I didn't
beat
know
that
Apple
for that
still
price
sold
range.
those.
Yep.
Okay.
They still sell the original too, actually, from what I know.
Wow.
But you know, I definitely think as we close out the year, and actually we close out this podcast, you know, I think that next year, you know, we're thinking of the Snapdragon 820. You know, we're looking at Snapdragon's return in flagships. I think that next year is going to really be the breakout year yet again for the $150 to $250 price range for phones and for tablets. I think we're going to see a lot of things in that market, and this year I think was good. I think next year is going to be stellar. And you know, I think that that's its last big hurrah, because we know that Asus and a lot of other manufacturers aren't making a whole lot of money off of that market. So they're going to have to, you know, really push hard, really start to make profits off of that market, and then we can see it be sustainable. Or next year might be the last year for that market. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank this guy. Free market right there.
But on that note, though, I think we can probably close out this podcast. We've talked a lot about you know, affordable devices, how Android and Google are pushing more towards affordable devices. We're looking forward to hopefully some really good updates coming out next week. Maybe we'll have Update Monday or Update Wednesday coming up next week. And you know, we'll of course be back next week with whatever news. We record on Wednesday evenings most times, so we'll have whatever news comes out next week. We'll be definitely talking about that on the podcast.
I was gonna say, of course, there's some news we missed, and if there was something that you wanted to see, let us know, so we could cover it. Because obviously we can't cover everything. So
yeah, definitely. You know, leave comments in the on the YouTube page. We always post it on Reddit as well, or you can shoot us at our Twitters. You can actually contact me at Ultimax98 on Twitter, at Ultimax98 on Reddit as well, and my YouTube channel is at Daniel Marchena.
Yeah, and you can find me everywhere at Anthony VRDiz, Twitter, Reddit. You know, just send me a message. I'm always on those sites. So.
And you can just find me at XDA Developers. I write a couple articles every week. I edit behind the scenes. If not, you can hit me up at Takyungan, and Takyungan is my handle on Reddit as well. It's my handle. Yep. So there you go. Just hit.
Hit Mario up.
I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, I didn't want to give any wrong impressions. You know, just message me about the podcast strictly.
So in other words, his Tinder profile is the same.
Oh no, trust me. No.
See you guys next week.
Come on.